The HOA president tried to steal my lake just 3 days after I moved in. What she didn't realize was that I owned the docks her entire neighborhood relied on. Picture this: I was standing in my late uncle's cabin, the air still thick with the scent of funeral lilies and old pine, when a pearl-white Escalade came crunching up the gravel driveway. Out stepped a woman in a tennis outfit, at 9 a.m. on a Tuesday, clutching a folder like it was the Holy Grail. "I'm Belinda Crankshaw, HOA president," she announced, thrusting paperwork into my hands. "This lake is community property. You need to sign over marina operations immediately." The papers looked official, crisp, and full of legal jargon, but something about the desperation in her eyes screamed bluff. What I didn't know then was that she was sitting on a financial time bomb, and I was the only person who could either defuse it or blow up her entire scam. What would you do if someone tried to steal your inheritance right after a funeral? Drop a comment with your worst HOA nightmare and where you're watching from. Let me back up and explain how I landed in this war. 6 months ago, I was Marcus Trenton, 45, divorced, an electrician from Detroit. I lived in a studio apartment that reeked of instant ramen and poor life choices. My ex-wife got the house. I got the legal bills. The future looked about as bright as a blown fuse. Then Uncle Silas died, and everything changed. Silas had always been the family hermit, 40 years alone on a stunning lakefront property in Michigan. He barely spoke to anyone but kept meticulous journals. His funeral was tiny, just me and a few leathery neighbors who whispered stories about how he kept the vultures away. The lawyer's office reeked of stale coffee and hopelessness as he slid the inheritance documents across the desk. 2 acres of prime lakefront, Mr. Trenton, he said. "The cabin needs work, but you now own 400 feet of Lake Winnebago shoreline, including underwater rights and the 8-slip marina your uncle ran." Underwater rights? I had no idea what that even meant, but those boat slips were pulling in $200 a month each. Do the math, that's $1,600 in monthly income I'd just inherited. The property was incredible. Towering pine trees shaded a 1960s cabin with great bones. The water was crystal clear, gently lapping against the professionally built docks. The scent of lake air mixed with sawdust from Silas's old workshop still lingered. This place felt like a real second chance. Then Belinda Crankshaw arrived, 3 days after the funeral. 3 days. I was measuring for new windows when the gravel erupted under the tires of that same white Escalade. Out she came, radiating entitlement like heat off a parking lot. Tennis outfit, designer sunglasses, a fake smile sharp enough to slice glass. "Belinda Crankshaw, HOA president," she said again, this time with 2 jittery board members trailing behind. "We need to discuss your situation." The way she said situation made my jaw tighten. She shoved an official-looking folder into my hands. Inside were legal papers claiming the lake access was part of a grandfathered community easement, and that I needed to hand over control of the marina for $1 per year. "This is how Lakeshore Estates operates," she explained slowly, like I couldn't grasp big words. "We maintain standards and protect property values. We simply can't allow inappropriate commercial operations disrupting our family community." Her voice was soaked in that fake politeness that reeked of something worse. What she was really saying was, "People like you don't belong here." Then came the threat. 48 hours, she said, adjusting her sunglasses like a blade. "Sign willingly or we'll crush you in court." Ask the Hendersons how that turned out. "Oh wait, you can't. They sold and moved after we made their lives hell." The threat hung in the air like thick lake humidity. That night, surrounded by Silas's dusty papers and the quiet lapping of water against the dock, I started digging into his journals, and what I found made my blood boil. Entry after entry described Belinda's calculated harassment of lakefront owners. The Kowalski family forced out after 18 months of lawsuits. The young Martinez couple driven away by a hailstorm of violation notices and intimidation. Then I found the entry, the one that froze me in my seat. "Belinda thinks she's clever, but she doesn't know about the 1999 county easement agreement. $12,000 annual fee required for lake access rights. Haven't seen a payment in years. Whoever inherits this place, that's your nuclear option." A nuclear option? My hands trembled. I flipped to another entry. "The marina sits on my underwater property. Every dock post, chain, cleat, mine by deed, let the vultures come, the next owner will have all the ammo they need. I leaned back in Silas's creaky old chair, bitter coffee in hand, and stared out over the moonlit lake. This wasn't just about a property dispute. It was about an organized bully who had spent years terrorizing and cheating people out of their homes, using the HOA like a weapon. But she'd made one mistake. She picked the wrong target this time. The musty basement still held more secrets. And something told me Silas had left me everything I needed to flip the script on Queen Belinda and her HOA kingdom. It was time to go hunting. Belinda wasn't going to play nice, and soon she'd bring the entire. The morning after Belinda's ultimatum expired, I was making coffee when 3 vehicles rolled up my driveway like an invasion force, a county inspection truck, a sheriff's deputy cruiser, and, of course, Belinda's Pearl, white Escalade pulling up last like a royal chariot. The smell of diesel exhaust mixed with the aroma of my freshly ground coffee as I stood on the porch, watching the circus arrive. "Mr. Trenton," the lead man said, stepping forward. "Dave Morrison, County Inspector. We've received multiple complaints about illegal commercial operations, environmental violations, and unpermitted structures." Behind him, Belinda stood in that same tennis outfit, as if it were armor, practically bouncing with anticipation. The deputy looked half asleep but was clearly there to make sure I cooperated. "I'm sure this is just a paperwork mix-up," Belinda said sweetly from the sideline. "Once Mr. Trenton understands our community standards, I'm confident he'll make the appropriate arrangements." But here's the thing about working 20 years in construction. You can smell intimidation a mile away, and you learn to document everything. "Ma'am, I need to conduct this inspection without interference," Dave told Belinda, firm but polite. Her smile froze in place like frost on a windshield. "Of course. I'll wait in my vehicle," she said sharply. The moment she was out of earshot, Dave leaned in and spoke in a low voice. "Your Uncle Silas was good people," he said. "This woman's been filing complaints against you for 3 weeks. Before you even moved in. That tell you anything? 3 weeks. I'd inherited the place only 4 weeks ago." Dave conducted the inspection with professional thoroughness while I pulled out my phone and began recording. Every dock post, every breaker box, every permit that Silas had carefully kept in order. 0 violations. The sound of Dave flipping clipboard pages was almost soothing, blending with the hum of Belinda's idling Escalade in the distance. "Listen," Dave said as we walked along the shoreline. "I've seen this before twice. Same pattern. Constant harassment, stacks of complaints, then, bam, the property sells dirt cheap. Both times, guess who bought it? Shell companies tied back to this HOA." The pieces clicked into place like a perfectly wired circuit. That night, I didn't just skim through Uncle Silas's papers. I photographed every page. The filing cabinet in the basement smelled like mothballs and righteous fury. What I found inside was nothing short of a masterclass in documentation. The 1952 deed was crystal clear. All riparian rights extended to the lake's centerline, including the bottom of the lake and all structures built there. Silas had underlined that section in red ink and scribbled a note in the margin. Most people don't know. Waterfront property usually includes lake bottom to centerline unless otherwise stated. That's why it's more expensive. Every dock, every slip, every cleat, legally mine. But the real gold mine wasn't just the deed. It was Silas's 40-year battle record with the HOA, letters demanding payment for marina use, threats of legal action, his replies, always calm, always referencing the deed, always keeping copies. The next morning I fired my counterstrike. I called Dave Morrison directly. "Dave," I said, "I need to file some complaints. Trespassing, unauthorized use of private property, and illegal commercial activity without landowner permission." "What commercial activity?" he asked, puzzled. "The HOA been charging $200 per month for marina slips on my lake bottom for 15 years. Not a single dime has been paid in rent." Silence. Then, "Jesus Christ, you got documentation. 40 years worth." That afternoon I met my first real allies. Tom and Betty Henderson knocked on my door holding a tray of cookies that smelled like victory. They looked nervous, like undercover agents. "We heard what Belinda's doing," Betty said quietly, glancing around. "Same playbook she used on us, but we brought you something." Tom handed me a thick folder. Inside, every violation notice, every legal threat, every dirty trick Belinda had pulled on them before they sold and moved. The cookies were chocolate chip justice as I flipped through 17 violation notices in just 6 months. Grass too long, measured with a ruler, mailbox color non-compliant, trash cans visible from the street for exactly 37 minutes past pickup time. The paper felt worn, like Tom had reread his grievances 100 times. Cost us $31,000 in legal fees, Tom said bitterly. Then her husband Dale, he's a mortgage consultant, suddenly found problems with our financing when we started to push back. Real convenient. But it was Betty's next comment that snapped everything into focus. 3 other families on the lake got the same treatment, she said. The Kowalskis, that young Martinez couple, the Patels, all of them sold for 60 to 70% of market value, all to the same shell company, Tom added. That night, I sat on my dock, staring out over the moonlit water lapping against posts that were legally mine. I made a decision. This wasn't just about saving my inheritance anymore. This was about stopping a predator who had spent years ruining people's lives. I opened my laptop and started typing, not a surrender, a declaration of war. The next morning, Belinda would find certified letters waiting in her mailbox, formal trespassing notices for every boat docked in my marina. I demanded $50,000 in back rent and gave the HOA 30 days to remove all vessels from my lake bed. Game on, Queen Belinda. Her response was swift, vicious, and completely predictable. Within 48 hours, she'd called an emergency HOA meeting at the community center. Flyers in red bold letters screamed, "Urgent community health hazard." According to her notice, my marina posed immediate environmental and safety risks to families and property values. I wasn't invited, of course, but Tom Henderson was. He called me right after. "She's lost her damn mind," he whispered. "Claimed your dock upgrades are leaching chemicals into the lake. Said you're planning to start a commercial fishing operation that'll bring in undesirable elements." The coded language made my skin crawl. But I wasn't surprised. People like Belinda show their true colors when they're cornered. Tom wasn't done. She's hired a hotshot lawyer from Grand Rapids. Guy charges $400 an hour. They're filing an injunction to stop your construction, claiming environmental violations. So the HOA was burning through member dues like dry leaves, all to steal what wasn't theirs. But Belinda's real masterstroke came the next morning. I was replacing rotted dock planks when I heard car doors slam. 3 of my slip renters, the Johnsons, the Kowalskis, and a soft-spoken older man named Frank, walked up my driveway, clearly dreading it. "Marcus," Frank began, voice heavy, "we got letters from the HOA. If we don't cancel our leases with you by Friday, we'll be fined $500 a day for supporting non-compliant commercial operations." The scent of fresh wood stain on my hands mixed with the quiet fear radiating from decent people just trying to enjoy the lake. "She can't legally do that," I said. Frank only shook his head. "Maybe not, but she can make our lives hell trying." The Johnsons had already been slapped with a violation for their garden gnome being aesthetically inconsistent. Frank's mailbox, after 15 years, was suddenly deemed the wrong height. Death by 1,000 paper cuts. Exactly what Belinda did to the Hendersons. That afternoon, I called Patricia Wung, the maritime attorney Tom recommended. She specialized in lakefront property disputes. Her voice was crisp, efficient, and not cheap. "Mr. Trenton, I reviewed the documents. Your riparian rights are ironclad, but there's more you need to know." I braced myself. "What is it?" "I've seen this before. Belinda Crankshaw has acquired 4 lakefront properties over the last 8 years using identical harassment campaigns. She applies legal pressure, forces court battles, then offers to settle at 60% of market value. The pattern was clear now. And here's the interesting part," Patricia continued. "I cross-referenced property records with her husband Dale's bank. Lakeshore Bank holds mortgages on 23 of the 47 HOA homes. If Dale is influencing HOA decisions, it's a massive conflict of interest. Bingo." But she wasn't done. "Your uncle's records show slip renters paid $200/month for 15 years, but the HOA-owned records show members were charged $2 $150/month for marina maintenance. Wait, they skimmed $50 per member for 15 years. That's $36,000 in fraudulent fees. This wasn't just a land grab. Belinda was defrauding her neighbors systematically. That night, I changed tactics. No more playing defense. I went on the offensive. I spent 3 hours writing a detailed letter to all 47 HOA members, outlining the financial fraud, revealing the conflict of interest, documenting the harassment patterns, but the final paragraph was the nuke. Effective immediately, all marina operations will cease until the HOA settles at $144,000 debt for unauthorized use of my lake bottom. All boats must be removed within 30 days, or they will be considered abandoned property subject to disposal. I sent the letter by certified mail. By Thursday, my phone was ringing nonstop, not with angry calls, but with desperate ones. Half the neighborhood had boats docked at my marina. With the slips closed, they had nowhere to go, but the best call came from Patricia. "Marcus," she said, "remember that 1999 county agreement your uncle mentioned? I found it. The HOA lake access easement required $12,000/year in payments to the property owner. How many payments did they make?" I asked. Her answer, 0. They owed me $312,000 in back easement fees, and without that easement, 31 of 47 homes would lose their lake access, and instantly 40% of their property value. I wasn't the one under siege anymore. Belinda was. She responded like a storm. Within hours, she was calling city council members, commissioners, anyone who would listen. Her claim, I was an environmental terrorist. Tuesday morning, while installing dock cleats, a city truck pulled up. Lettering on the side, Environmental Protection Services. A man with a clipboard got out. Mr. Trenton, Jim Bailey, contracted to investigate septic system violations, reports of untreated waste entering the lake. I led him through everything. The system had been serviced 6 months ago by Uncle Silas. After inspecting, Bailey admitted quietly, "Looks fine to me. Between us, though, I've had 3 separate calls demanding this inspection. Same lady, same tone. It was harassment. Coordinated, relentless. Wednesday morning brought a new twist. I was checking the mail when Jerry Kowalski jogged over, face pale. "Marcus," he said, "you need to know what happened last night. Emergency board meeting. Belinda hired a private investigator from Detroit. He's digging into your life." The taste of my morning coffee turned bitter. "What kind of dirt?" I asked. "Everything, your divorce, your finances, your job history. She's trying to make you look unfit to own lakefront property." He glanced around, nervous, but here's the thing. Half the board is sick of her. 2 members already resigned over personal liability concerns. That afternoon came the call I'd been bracing for. "Mr. Trenton, this is Amanda Bennett from Channel 8 News." An anonymous tip about environmental violations had reached her desk. Would I like to comment? "Absolutely," I said, "but not about violations, about systemic HOA fraud and harassment campaigns." I gave her the 30-second version: fraudulent marina fees, mortgage conflicts of interest, property devaluation through harassment. By the end, she had scheduled an on-site interview for Friday, but Belinda still wasn't done. Thursday morning, I was replacing a railing section when 3 vehicles roared up the driveway. A county inspector, a sheriff's deputy, and, no joke, a man in a hazmat suit from the state environmental agency. "Sir, we need to cease all construction immediately," hazmat guy said, "pending investigation of groundwater contamination." The scent of fresh lumber mixed with diesel and bureaucratic theater. Behind them, Belinda sat in her Escalade like a general watching a siege. But Uncle Silas had trained me well. I pulled out my phone and started recording. Badge numbers, names, everything. Then I called Patricia on speaker. "Gentlemen," I said, "you're on with my attorney." Patricia's voice was surgical. "What contaminants are you testing for? What baseline do you have? Who filed the complaint?" Suddenly, no one wanted to talk. Belinda's claim, I was dumping chemicals into the lake. The reality, I'd used eco-friendly products and had the receipts. But the real breakthrough came that evening. Tom Henderson knocked on my door holding a manila folder. "Betty and I did some digging. He said, "Remember those families Belinda pushed out? We contacted them." He spread out deeds, sale records, and corporate filings on my table. Every property, all bought by the same shell company, Lakeshore Development LLC. Guess who the managing members were? I didn't have to guess. Belinda and Dale Crankshaw. They had been using inflated appraisals and fraudulent tactics to steal lakefront properties for nearly a decade. This wasn't just bullying, it was organized crime. That night, I sat on my dock listening to the lake lap against posts that had become ground zero in a war I never wanted. The moon glinted off the water like silver coins. And I realized this wasn't about just my land anymore. It was about justice for every neighbor, every family Belinda had hurt. Tomorrow, Channel 8 would have everything they needed to blow this wide open. But tonight I enjoyed the silence before the storm. Friday morning changed everything. I was organizing Uncle Silas's files when I found a sealed manila envelope hidden behind the filing cabinet, written in Silas's distinctive handwriting for my heir when the vultures circle. Inside was a 1999 agreement between Silas and Lakeshore County, easement agreement for lakefront development access. Turns out, the county needed Silas's shoreline to build the subdivision. In exchange, they granted the HOA lake access, but only if they paid $12,000/year. For 26 years, they never paid a dime. That night, sitting on my dock with new security cameras humming softly overhead, it hit me Belinda had made a fatal miscalculation. Every shady move, every false complaint, every desperate setup was now being documented from multiple angles. She thought she was tearing me down. Instead, she was building the federal case that would end her. Belinda's last week of freedom turned into a masterclass in criminal panic. Monday morning, I woke to find my driveway blocked by a truck labeled Lakeshore Property Management Services. Two men in golf polos were measuring my shoreline and snapping photos like they owned it. "Excuse me," I called out. "This is private property." The bigger guy barely glanced up. "Court order, buddy. HOA hired us to assess community assets for potential receivership." "Court order, my ass." I checked. No such filing existed, but they didn't realize I'd been recording everything. By Tuesday, Belinda escalated to outright forgery. Patricia Wung called, her voice tight with restrained fury. "Marcus, she filed a marina lease renewal with the county clerk's office. Claims you signed a 99-year agreement giving all lake access rights to the HOA for $1 annually." The hell I did. They accepted it until I brought in a handwriting expert. The forgery's pathetic. She didn't even get the capital letters right. Federal felony, 5 years minimum for document forgery. Wednesday, she tried bribery. Judge Morrison's campaign fund suddenly received a mysterious $5,000 donation from concerned Lakeshore citizens. That same day, Belinda filed motions challenging the easement agreement. Problem: the donation check was signed by Dale Crankshaw using the HOA account. That's campaign finance fraud, misuse of funds, and attempted judicial bribery, all wrapped in one. She was collecting felonies like Pokemon cards. Thursday morning brought environmental theater. I was sipping coffee when Patricia called again, laughter bubbling through. "You're not going to believe this. Belinda staged an environmental protest outside the county office, hired about 15 people from a temp agency, all holding signs saying you're poisoning the lake." Did it work? Oh, it worked for us. Channel 8 interviewed them. Half admitted on camera they were paid $50 and had no clue what they were protesting. The rest couldn't even pronounce environmental. The desperation was turning into slapstick. But Friday chilled me to the core. Rebecca Marsh called early, her teacher voice sharp with concern. "Marcus, Emma Crankshaw didn't show up to school yesterday. I called the house. Belinda claimed they were visiting grandparents, but Emma's grandmother lives 2 streets over. She hasn't seen them. The family was fleeing." An hour later, Tom Henderson confirmed it. Saw him loading big suitcases into Dale's car at 5:00 a.m. Looks like they're skipping town. They were running before the investigation caught up. That afternoon, I got the call that changed everything. FBI Special Agent Lisa Bennett, Financial Crimes Division. Mr. Trenton, we've been monitoring your neighborhood for several weeks. Your attorney gave us extensive documentation systematic real estate fraud. We're ready to proceed. Proceed how? Arrests, search warrants, asset seizure. Mrs. Crankshaw has been operating a racketeering ring across state lines. Similar cases in Ohio and Indiana. This is no longer just a local HOA issue. Belinda wasn't just stealing lakefront property. She was orchestrating a multi-state fraud operation. We need you to attend Saturday's HOA meeting as planned. Agent Bennett said, let her think she's safe. We'll execute warrants during the meeting. Can you do that? Saturday morning arrived misty and heavy with the scent of rain. The community center parking lot overflowed 47 households, local media, and what looked like half the county sheriff's department in unmarked vehicles. Inside, Belinda sat at the head table, navy blazer-like armor. Her fake smile stretched so tight it looked painful. Dale hunched beside her, eyes glued to his phone like doom was a notification away. The meeting began normally, budget updates, landscaping plans, classic HOA fluff, but the tension, palpable. Then Rebecca Marsh stood. I'd like to ask about the $147,000 in unpaid easement fees the HOA owes Mr. Trenton for lake access. Silence. Belinda's smile flickered like a dying bulb. I'm not sure what you're referring to, she replied. Tom Henderson rose. The 1999 county agreement. It requires $12,000 annually for community lake access. We haven't paid since 2017. More neighbors stood. Jerry Kowalski, Betty Henderson, 15 families realizing their president had lied for years. Belinda snapped. This is a coordinated attack by outside agitators trying to destroy our property values. That's when Agent Bennett walked in, FBI badge glinting beneath the fluorescent lights. Mrs. Belinda Crankshaw, you're under arrest for racketeering, mail fraud, wire fraud, document forgery, and conspiracy to commit real estate fraud. The click of handcuffs was the most satisfying sound I'd ever heard. Game over, Queen Belinda. The room exploded. Belinda's face went sheet white. Behind Agent Bennett, 3 more FBI agents entered. Sheriff's deputies took up positions at the exits. This is outrageous. Belinda shrieked, standing so fast her chair toppled. I want my lawyer. You'll get one. Agent Bennett replied coolly, producing the handcuffs that gleamed like silver justice. Belinda Crankshaw, you are under arrest. More charges followed. Bribery, wire fraud, conspiracy. Cameras rolled, phones recorded. Dale tried slipping out the side door. Deputy Martinez was already there. Dale Crankshaw, you're also under arrest for bank fraud and conspiracy. Local Channel 8 was live. The image of Belinda in cuffs, red, faced and shaking, would be played on repeat for weeks. This is a setup, she screamed. He's the criminal. He threatened us. He's trying to steal our lake. I stood slowly, manila folder in hand. Actually, Belinda, let's talk about who's been stealing what. I walked to the front, voice clear over the silence. Ladies and gentlemen, your HOA president has lied for 8 years about the most basic legal foundation of your lake access. I held up the 1999 easement agreement. This document, signed by the county and my uncle, requires $12,000 annual payments for your right to use the lake. Without those payments, 31 homes lose all water access. The room stirred. Jerry Kowalski raised his hand. How much do we owe, including compound interest? $147,000. But that wasn't all. I pulled out property records. Your president systematically targeted lakefront owners, harassed them into selling below market, then bought their homes through shell companies at 60% of market value. The murmur turned into fury, and she defrauded you directly. HOA fees $250 monthly were supposed to maintain the marina. She only paid my uncle $200. That's $50 skimmed from each of you every month for 15 years. $36,000 stolen from this community. Chaos. Shouts, anger. She stole from us. I paid for her fraud. How much money is gone? Belinda fought her cuffs, face twisted with panic. You don't get it. He's an outsider. He doesn't belong. We were protecting the community. From what? Rebecca Marsh demanded, rising. From a neighbor who actually owns his land. Tom Henderson stood too, his voice like thunder, from the truth. You drove us out of our home with lies and harassment. $31,000 in legal fees, all because you wanted our lake front property. More voices joined the rising chorus. Betty Henderson detailed how she received 17 violation notices in just 6 months. Jerry Kowalski described relentless intimidation tactics. 3 neighbors admitted they had seriously considered selling their homes just to escape the harassment. Agent Bennett stepped forward, holding up evidence bags. Mrs. Crankshaw attempted to bribe county inspectors, forged property documents, orchestrated mail theft, and filed false police reports. We have recordings, photographs, and witness testimony documenting a pattern of criminal behavior across multiple states. The media frenzy had reached a fever pitch. Camera flashes popped, reporters shouted, and social media exploded with hashtags like #HOA Scandal and #Lake were exposed. But the most satisfying moment came when I addressed the room directly. Despite everything your HOA president put me through, I'm offering a fair settlement. I'll forgive the $147,000 in back easement payments if the HOA agrees to a $50,000 payment plan over 5 years to fund marina upgrades and environmental restoration. A wave of relief swept through the room. Additionally, I'll preserve community lake access at reasonable fees, create a resident-run marina management committee, and ensure full transparency moving forward. Spontaneous applause broke out. People were realizing the nightmare was truly over. As FBI agents led Belinda and Dale toward the exit, she turned back one last time, her voice cracking with rage. This isn't over. My lawyers will destroy you. But Agent Bennett delivered the mic. Drop response. Ma'am, you're facing 37 federal charges. Your lawyers are going to be very busy. The doors to the community center slammed shut behind them, like the sound of a jail cell closing. Justice Lake, front style. 6 months later, the smell of barbecue smoke and fresh pine needles drifted across Lake Winnebago as 300 residents gathered for the first ever Lake Freedom Festival. Belinda Crankshaw was serving 18 months in federal prison after pleading guilty to 14 counts of fraud and racketeering. Dale had lost his banking license and was serving 2 years for conspiracy. The FBI had seized $340,000 in illegal proceeds, along with their home, vehicles, and boat, all auctioned to compensate the victims. But this wasn't about revenge. It was about justice. The transformation was stunning. The newly elected HOA board, voted in unanimously after Belinda's arrest, lashed annual dues by 45% through open budgeting. Property values jumped 18% once buyers knew lake access was secure and the leadership was honest. The fake marina maintenance fees were gone, replaced by real improvements the community could actually see. Marcus, you've got to see this, Rebecca Marsh called out, jogging over with her bright teacher's smile. We'd been dating for 4 months. Turns out fighting corruption together makes a strong foundation. She handed me a thick envelope. It was a $25,000 state grant for environmental restoration. Our conservation project, the Seala's Trenton Lake Initiative, would restore 200 acres of shoreline into healthy habitats for fish, birds, and future generations of kids who'd grow up swimming in clean water. Tom and Betty Henderson approached with plates of pulled pork that smelled like second chances. They'd become the neighborhood's unofficial grandparents, now hosting weekly coffee meetups where neighbors talked instead of filing complaints. 42 kids signed up for sailing lessons. Betty said proudly. Emma Crankshaw was first on the list. Emma had stayed with her grandmother after the arrests. Free from chaos, she was thriving. Now one of Rebecca's best students. Sometimes justice looks like a 10-year-old girl learning to sail on the lake her parents tried to steal. The new marina cooperative was generating $3,200 a month, funding a playground, road repairs, and a new wheelchair-accessible beach. Uncle Silas would have loved seeing his old boat slip. Serve the whole community instead of padding corrupt pockets. Then Jerry Kowalski bounded over with incredible news. Patricia Wung just called. Our story won a regional Emmy, and she's launching a national legal clinic for HOA abuse victims. They're calling it the Lake Winnebago model. The media coverage had been intense, but ultimately healing. My phone rang every week with calls from people across the country facing similar HOA harassment. Patricia's legal clinic had already helped 17 families fight back in 6 different states. Ripple effect was real. The Michigan legislature passed the Property Rights Protection Act, requiring full disclosure of easement agreements and criminal penalties for systemic harassment. Ohio, Wisconsin, and Indiana were drafting their own versions. Uncle Silas's quiet defiance had sparked a national movement, but the moment that meant the most came when the original Kowalski family returned. They'd bought a cabin across the lake, close enough to rejoin the community they had once been forced to flee. "You didn't just save your land," Mr. Kowalski said, voice thick with emotion. "You saved the idea that ordinary people can fight back and win." As the sun dipped low, casting gold and crimson across the lake, I stood on the same dock where this battle had begun. The wood was worn smooth by countless neighbors who no longer feared enjoying the place they called home. Children's laughter echoed over water now sparkling with stars and second chances. The newly created Silas Trenton Environmental Scholarship would provide $5,000 annually to local students pursuing conservation or environmental law. The first recipient, Emma Crankshaw, proof that even the children of villains deserve a shot at doing better. Uncle Silas taught me that protecting good people sometimes means standing up to the bad. But his true legacy was simpler. Communities heal when neighbors choose courage over fear, truth over comfort, and justice over convenience. As stars emerged above Lake Winnebago, twinkling like diamonds on waters that finally belonged to everyone, I realized something. This wasn't just a victory, it was a movement. If you're watching this and have your own HOA horror story, drop it in the comments. Tell us where you're from. You might be featured next. And if you enjoyed seeing justice served lakefront style, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell for more epic HOA takedowns, because sometimes the good guys do win. Thanks for watching HOA Stories, where petty tyrants get checked and communities rise.